Hello everyone, greetings from PayTabs technical support team. In this series, you will learn how to integrate with PayTabs through our PT2 API endpoints. Throughout the series, we will walk you through the second integration type, which is the invoices. And for the purpose of this series, we have created a very simple Laravel project to walk you through the integration process. But feel free to follow the steps in this series with your own project, whatever the programming language or the frameworks used to integrate with PayTabs. So, let's get started. In this video, we are going to learn about our query transaction API, which is one of our follow-up transactions. So, let's get started. The first thing you should know is that you can find the full documentation for this part inside PayTab support portal under the article called the Invoices APIs Integration Manual. Now, over here in the integration manual, you can see that step 7 is dedicated to manage your transaction or to manage your already made transactions. And one of these managing transactions or follow-up transactions are the query transaction. The query transaction is a very simple API that PayTabs offers you in order to, let's say, get or know about any transaction details that you want. So simply, you send us, you use of course our query endpoint over here, then you send us any transaction reference, and in response you will receive all these transaction details. You can use either the transaction reference to get these details, or actually you can also use the cart ID to get these details. So this is what we are going to do in this video. So simply in our code, we have created a simple query payload over here, which is only needs the profile ID and the transaction reference. And what I've done inside my front end over here, that I have created a very simple UI to just enter a transaction reference. So here, any transaction reference I will enter, I want to get all its details once I click query. Now, of course, this is not the only use case for that, but imagine if you have multiple transactions or order in your store and something happens up and you want to find out the details of a certain transaction, or you want to update the details of certain transaction, or for some reasons you have lost an order on a transaction and you want to get the details of the transaction. This where comes the query API. Here you will be able to get the details of this transaction using only its transaction reference or its cart ID. So for now I'm going to use the transaction reference, and actually let's create out a transaction and invoice from the beginning. I'm going to fill out our normal transaction over here, going to proceed to it. Let's choose pay. Now I will use one of my test cards. I'll pay it. Now, as you can see, this is of course my return response. As you can see, I have the basic transaction details over here. What I'm going to do is to take the transaction reference, then I'm going to my query form over here and just paste it and query it up. Oh, I see there is some reloading. Just let's save to yes, exactly. I'm going to clear my cache, query it up right now, and here it is. Now, as you can see, simply what I did that I sent the transaction reference, and in return I have received all these transaction details. Now I have got the payment result over here. As you can see, the response status, all the details of the payment response. I have the payment info. I have all the details of this transaction by just sending up the transaction reference. Actually, if you do not even have the transaction reference, of course you will be having the cart ID for some reason, and you may use it. So let's change this code a little bit. Let's get back to our query front end. Yes, so I'm going to send here the cart ID to see there is a little different when sending the cart ID than sending the transaction reference. So inside our code, let's get over here and send the transaction reference to cart ID. Okay, and I'm going to save this out, and this time I'm going to get back to my controller, and instead of just returning the response into my return page, I'm going to DD the response to see how the response will look after I have used the cart ID. Now, let's get back over here. And as you can see, I have here a cart ID. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another transaction with the same cart ID just to see the difference. So let's get back to our home page. Let's just reload it to avoid the 419 expired error. Going to proceed to payment. To pay it out now. I'm going to use my test card again. To pay it now. Now, as you can see, now I have another transaction with the same cart ID, and actually I may have another multiple transaction with the same cart ID. So what I'm going to do right now, use this cart ID over here. Let's create up. As you can see, instead of receiving just a transaction response for one transaction, I have received the transaction reference for all, or actually the transaction details for all the transactions that contain this cart ID, as you can see. So this is how you can use our query transaction API using the transaction reference or using the cart ID. You may then use this response to update any system or to update any front end or any business need just as it suits you. So now we can move to the next video.